Welcome to the deep dive. Ever wonder how massive undertakings, from launching a new phone to building a skyscraper,
Yeah.
actually get done?
Mm-hmm.
The answer, really, in a nutshell, is projects. And for you, the learner, this session is designed to cut through the complexity.
Yeah, get straight to the point.
Exactly. Give you a clear understanding of what makes projects tick, the essential knowledge, distilled from a range of sources without burying you in jargon.
Right.
Our mission today is simple. Let's unpack the core elements of projects and, well, why getting a handle on them is so crucial in today's world.
Absolutely. We've looked at a lot of information to bring you not just the definitions, but the real insights. What truly defines a project? How's it different from just everyday operations?
Right.
What are the fundamental principles for, managing them well? And what different shapes and sizes do they come in? We're aiming for that kind of aha moment, giving you practical knowledge you can actually use.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So at its heart, what is a project? Our sources consistently point to its temporary nature.
Mm-hmm. That's key.
It has a definitive start and a definitive end. It's not, open-ended.
Right.
But maybe even more importantly, a project aims to deliver something unique.
Yeah.
It's about creating a specific outcome, whether that's like a brand new product hitting the market, a novel service being offered, or even a significant improvement to how things are already done.
And what's interesting about that unique deliverable part is the uncertainty it often brings,
Yeah.
Because you're creating something new, you're often dealing with the unknown. And this really highlights why having clearly defined objectives is so, so important.
Okay.
A project isn't just some vague idea. It needs specific, measurable goals, like a compass for the team. And ideally, these goals should always connect back to a bigger strategy.
Right. Otherwise, what's the point?
Exactly. A project without that strategic link, well, it risks being just a well-executed distraction, really.
And as anyone who's ever tried to get anything done knows, there are always limits. We're talking about those inevitable constraints.
Yeah, the big ones.
The budget, the money you actually have, the timeline, the deadline you've got to hit, the manpower, the people available, and even the technology you can get your hands on. These aren't just like annoying hurdles. They actively shape how the whole thing unfolds.
They absolutely do. And a common trap is focusing too much on just those tangible things, budget, schedule, and forgetting the human element.
The stakeholders.
Exactly, the stakeholders. And that's not just the obvious ones, like your clients or your immediate team.
Okay.
It includes sponsors, end users, even people who are just indirectly affected. A key insight here is that understanding and managing the expectations of all these stakeholders, even the ones not doing the tasks.
Right.
That can be the difference between things running smoothly and hitting major roadblocks later on. Talking to them early, anticipating needs, it saves a lot of headaches.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the line between a project and other business stuff can sometimes seem a bit fuzzy.
Yeah.
How do we clearly separate a project from, say, a product that a company sells?
That's a really important distinction to make. Think of a product as something designed to give ongoing value, like a smartphone or a piece of software.
Okay.
These things have a life cycle, right? From creation, launch, updates, maybe eventual retirement. It's continuous.
Well, go on.
But a project, as we've established, it's temporary. Its whole focus is hitting specific goals within a set time and budget. The product life cycle is evolution. The project life cycle is a defined sequence of phases.
So a product goes through stages like development, launch, growth, maybe decline. What are the equivalent stages for a project? We touched on this.
Yeah, a project typically moves through initiation, defining and authorizing it, then planning, creating the roadmap, execution, actually doing the work, monitoring, control, tracking progress, making adjustments, and finally closure, wrapping everything up.
Okay.
Ownership is really different too. A product usually has a product manager, right? Someone looking after its long-term vision. A project has a project manager focused purely on delivering that specific project's outcomes. And while the product is the thing for the market, the project's output might just be the first version of that product or a single feature or even just the R&D leading to it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So projects often sort of give birth to products or product updates.
Exactly, or significantly enhance them. Our sources really highlight this vital symbiotic relationship.
How so?
Well, first, like you said, projects are the engines creating new products or big upgrades. That new phone feature you just downloaded almost certainly came from a specific project.
Right.
And second, products constantly rely on projects to keep evolving. Think about software updates, bug fixes, totally new versions. These are usually managed as distinct projects.
Got it.
So while they're different in nature and how long they last, products and projects are, deeply tangled up together in innovation and delivery.
And how does a project differ from, say, the regular day-to-day operations of a business, like keeping the lights on?
Yeah, operations are those ongoing, repetitive things. Processing orders, manufacturing the standard stuff, routine customer service.
The usual grind.
Kind of, yeah. The key difference is purpose. A project has that specific, unique goal and a definite end. Operations are about maintaining and improving existing processes continuously. The project output is unique. Operations output is usually repetitive, standardized.
Okay, so now we have a pretty good handle on what a project is, but how do you actually guide one to success? That's where project management comes in, I assume.
Precisely. Project management is, well, it's both an art and a science. It's about planning, organizing, executing, and controlling resources.
Resources meaning?
Meaning time, budget, people, tools, all of it to achieve those specific project goals within the agreed time frame. It's not just ticking boxes on a checklist.
Right.
It's about applying, knowledge, specific skills, various tools, techniques, applying them in a way that best fits the unique challenges of each project.
And what are the absolute must-haves for managing a project effectively, the non-negotiables?
Several key elements really stand out. First, crystal clear goals and objectives. And they have to directly support the organization's bigger aims or stakeholder needs.
Okay.
Second, really solid scope management, defining clearly what the project will do and, just as importantly, what it won't do.
The dreaded scope creep shield.
Exactly. That's your defense against scope creep, where things just keep getting added, derailing timelines and budgets. Then you absolutely need effective time management, realistic schedules, tracking progress diligently.
Makes sense.
And of course, meticulous budget management, careful planning, and control of all the money involved.
You can have the best plans, the best budget control, but without the right people working together.
It falls apart, exactly. Team coordination is crucial, getting the right people with the right skills and fostering an environment where they actually collaborate well. Risk management is another big one, actively looking for potential problems before they happen and figuring out how to deal with them.
Proactive, not reactive.
Ideally, yes. Quality control ensures the final result meets the standards everyone agreed on. And finally, stakeholder communication, setting up clear, consistent ways to keep everyone in the loop about progress, problems, decisions.
Okay. Our sources also lay out that typical journey a project takes, those phases. Can you walk us through those, again, maybe with a bit more detail on what actually happens in each one?
Well, sure. So it usually starts with initiation. This is where the project gets its formal nod, its feasibility is checked, and a high-level plan gets sketched out. Key things coming out of this are often a business case, why are we doing this, and a project charter, which officially says go.
Authorizes it.
Right. Next is planning. This is the deep dive. Creating the detailed roadmap. Setting SMART goals specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound.
Got it.
Breaking down all the work into manageable chunks, often using a work breakdown structure or WBS. Developing a realistic schedule, figuring out who does what resources you need.
Okay, lots happening there.
Yeah, it's crucial. Then you move into execution. This is where the team actually does the work outlined in the plan, creates the deliverables.
Where rubber meets the road.
Pretty much. And running alongside execution is monitoring and control. This is all about tracking progress against the plan, managing the changes that always come up, and taking action if things go off track.
Like course correction.
Exactly. Tools like Earned Value Management, EVM, can be really useful here. They help track both cost and schedule performance against those baselines you set in planning, basically comparing where you should be with where you actually are.
Okay.
And finally, there's closure. Formally ending the project, getting final sign-offs, handing over the deliverables, and often doing a post-project review. What went well, what didn't, what do we learn for next time?
Lessons learned. Very important.
Hugely important.
So with all this structure and process in project management, what are the big picture goals? What are we ultimately trying to achieve?
Well, the core objectives are pretty varied. Obviously, the main one is successfully hitting all the project goals, deadlines, quality, delivering what was promised.
Right.
Effective project management also means giving clear direction and good supervision to the team, fostering cooperation and open communication, making sure safety procedures are followed.
Okay.
Managing the budget and resources wisely is critical. So is being able to handle changes and risks proactively. And ultimately, a huge objective is making sure the client is happy with the result.
Client satisfaction.
Absolutely. Along with being cost efficient in how you get there and always looking for ways to improve based on how things went. Continuous improvement.
The importance of project management seems almost obvious, but our sources really hammer this home. Why is it so vital for success?
Think of it like building a house. You need a solid foundation, right? A clear plan, careful execution. Without that, even the grandest design will, well, probably fall down.
Good analogy.
Same in software development. Those clear milestones and deadlines, managed through project management, keep the team focused, on track, delivering something that actually works.
Right.
Plus, it's your main tool for managing risk and planning ahead. Imagine launching a big marketing campaign. Project management helps you think about competitor reactions, shifts in what customers want, build in contingency plans, adapt your strategy.
So it's about looking ahead, preparing for bumps in the road, not just reacting when you hit one.
Precisely. It's proactive.
Yeah.
And it's also about making the absolute most of the resources you have, which are often limited. In manufacturing, for instance, carefully allocating materials, machines, people guided by PM principles, cuts down waste, maximizes output.
Efficiency.
Definitely. Or think about a big construction project, keeping the architects, contractors, clients all on the same page about progress, potential issues. That prevents massive misunderstandings.
Communication again.
Always key. And in today's world, things change fast. So adaptability, flexibility, often seen in agile methods, especially in software, lets teams respond to changing customer needs without completely derailing everything.
And it feels like a learning process too, right? Getting better over time.
Absolutely. Project management naturally involves setting up metrics to track progress, measure success. Like in a healthcare IT project, maybe you track how quickly staff adopt new electronic records.
Okay.
That data tells you what worked, what didn't, how to do better next time. Ultimately, good PM is about client satisfaction and quality. In graphic design, maybe it means building in feedback loops, quality checks.
To make sure the client loves the final design.
Exactly. Meets their vision, looks professional. That builds relationships, gets you more work down the line.
Okay, let's pivot a bit. Let's explore the different kinds of projects organizations actually do. It's not just one that type fits all, is it?
Not at all. Our sources break them down in several ways. Based on the main activity, you've got industrial projects making physical goods versus non-industrial ones.
Oh, nice.
Things like healthcare, education, building infrastructure, IT projects, a huge range.
Okay.
Geographically, projects can be national, just within one country, or international. And international ones. Well, they often add layers of complexity.
Different rules, cultures?
Exactly. Different regulations, cultural nuances, tricky logistics, especially if you're setting up something like a wholly owned subsidiary abroad.
And time seems to be another big differentiator.
Indeed. You have normal projects, which proceed at a standard pace, versus crash projects.
Crash projects. Sounds intense.
They often are. They have super strict, non-negotiable deadlines. You might have to spend extra money just to speed things up. Think emergency repairs before a hurricane hits or lining a canal quickly before the rainy season.
Gotcha. High pressure.
Definitely. Then there's ownership. Public sector projects run by the government, private sector ones aiming for profit, and joint sector projects a mix of public and private partners.
And the sheer size of a project must matter too.
Yeah, absolutely. Projects often get categorized as small, medium, or large, usually based on the total investment needed, though what counts as large can vary a lot by industry or even government definitions.
Okay.
And finally, a really detailed way to classify them is by the specific need they're addressing.
All right, I'm ready for the deep dive into project needs. Lay it on me.
Okay, so you've got new projects aiming to meet unmet customer needs or launch something totally novel. Balancing projects are about optimizing flow in existing production setups.
Streamlining.
Pretty much. Expansion projects increase capacity, maybe by building more or acquiring another company. Modernization projects tackle outdated tech, upgrading systems for efficiency.
Keeping up with the time.
Exactly. Replacement projects swap out old assets for new ones with similar functions just to keep things running smoothly. Diversification projects mean moving into new areas could be related to the current business or totally different. Think of a big conglomerate like Godrej, making everything from soap to appliances. Then there's backward integration moving up the supply chain, like acquiring suppliers. Apple making its own chips is a classic example.
Okay.
And forward integration is the opposite, gaining control down the supply chain over distribution. Like a farmer selling directly to consumers instead of through a wholesaler.
Wow, that's a really thorough breakdown. Now, zooming out a bit from those specifics, are there broader, more strategic ways to categorize projects.
Yes, definitely. We can group projects into three major strategic buckets. First, strategic projects. These are the big ones. Creating something new for a real competitive advantage.
Right.
A groundbreaking new product, an innovative service, entering a totally new market, building a cutting-edge factory. Game changers.
Okay.
Second, operational projects. These focus on improving current operations, making things cheaper, faster, better quality, enhancing what you already do.
Fine-tuning the engine.
Good way to put it. And third, compliance projects. These are basically mandatory. You have to do them to meet new regulations or standards, like changing food labels to list all ingredients correctly for health regulations.
Got it. Must-dos.
Exactly. Non-negotiable, often.
So, with all these potential projects floating around, how does an organization actually pick which ones to pursue? That's project selection, right? Seems critical.
Absolutely critical. Project selection is a major strategic activity because, well, resources are always limited. You want to put your money and effort into projects that are likely to succeed and give a good return.
Makes sense.
It means carefully analyzing opportunities, justifying the investment, and realizing you just can't do everything, even if it sounds like a good idea.
What are the main things organizations look at when they're making these big investment decisions?
Several key factors always come up. The expected costs, obviously. What resources are needed, people, tech, facilities, and are they available? What are the potential benefits? What's the likely return on investment, the ROI? And crucially, what are the risks involved? What could go wrong?
Okay. And how do they actually go about selecting the right projects? Is there a process?
There are several key steps and things to consider. First, how well does the project align with the company's overall strategy? That's huge.
Strategic fit.
Exactly. You also need to understand the company's own strengths and weaknesses and what's happening in the market outside. Looking at data from similar past projects can give you valuable clues.
Learning from history.
Right. And sometimes having a really passionate project champion, someone influential who really believes in it, can make a big difference in getting it approved.
Are there specific, tools or methods they use for this?
Oh yeah, lots of them. There's cost-benefit analysis, basically weighing the pros against the cons in dollar terms. The payback period method calculates how long it takes to earn back the initial investment. Discounted cash flow methods like net present value, NPV, or internal rate of return, IRR, are more sophisticated because they factor in the time value of money, that $1 today is worth more than $1 next year.
Right.
There's opportunity cost analysis. What are you giving up by choosing this project over the next best thing? Ranking methods just line up projects based on certain criteria. Scoring methods assign points for different factors.
More quantitative.
Yeah. And for really complex decisions with multiple criteria, you might use something like the analytical hierarchy process or AHP.
Okay, so a project gets the green light after careful selection. Now it enters its life cycle. We touched on the 5 stages earlier: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, closure. Let's dive a bit deeper into what happens in each.
Great. So initiation kicks things off. You're formally launching it, defining the high-level goals, scope, checking if it's even feasible, key outputs here, that business case justifying it, and the project charter giving the official go-ahead and the project manager authority.
Got it.
Phase 2 is planning. This is where the detailed roadmap gets built. Setting those SMART goals, creating the work breakdown structure, WBS, breaking everything down into tasks, developing the schedule, figuring out resources. The outputs are the detailed project management plans, scope baseline, schedule baseline, budget baseline.
The core plan.
Exactly. Then comes execution. The team gets to work doing the tasks, building the deliverables, managing their day-to-day work.
Where the action happens.
Definitely. And running right alongside it is monitoring and control. This is about tracking progress against those baselines from planning, managing changes through a formal process, taking corrective action if needed to get back on track.
Keeping it aligned.
Precisely. Key outputs here are performance reports, how are we doing versus the plan, and any approved change requests. And finally, closure. Wrapping it all up, formally finalizing everything, getting stakeholder sign-off, handing over the finished product or service.
And the lessons learned session.
Yes. Capturing what went well, what didn't for next time. Final reports, archiving documents, that's all part of closure too.
Now, when you're guiding a project through these stages, you don't just wing it, right? There are established approaches, project management methodologies.
Exactly. You don't just improvise. A methodology provides a structured framework, principles, processes, practices that guides how you organize, manage, and deliver the project.
And choosing one isn't random.
Not at all. The choice should be deliberate, based on the project itself. Things like the budget, the team size and experience, how much risk or uncertainty there is,
Okay.
how much flexibility you need, the timeline, how much you need to collaborate with clients or stakeholders. All these factors play a role.
So what are some of the main methodologies people use?
We can group them broadly. You have traditional approaches, agile-based ones, and then some hybrid or modern methods.
Okay, let's start with traditional.
Traditional methods like waterfall are very linear, sequential. You finish one phase completely before starting the next. Requirements, analysis, design, build, test, deploy. Very structured.
Step by step.
Exactly. The critical path method, CPM, isn't a full methodology itself, but it's a technique often used in traditional planning to find the longest sequence of tasks that determines the project duration, helping you optimize the schedule. Prince 2 is another big traditional one. It's a process-based framework with really defined roles and controls.
Okay. And then there's agile, which sounds more flexible.
Yes, Agile is all about iterative development and adapting to change. Scrum is huge in the Agile world. It uses short cycles called sprints, focuses on collaboration, frequent feedback, adapting as you go. You have a Scrum Master facilitating a backlog of tasks.
Right, I've heard of sprints.
Kanban is another Agile method, very visual. It uses boards to show workflow, limits work in progress to improve flow. Lean project management focuses on maximizing value, minimizing waste, any kind of waste.
Muda Murray.
Those are the classic lean terms for waste, unevenness, and overburden, yeah? Extreme programming, or XP, is an agile method mostly for software. Lots of teamwork, frequent releases, things like pair programming.
And what about these hybrid or modern ones? Mixing things up.
Kind of. Scrumban, like the name suggests, blends Scrum structure with Kanban's visual flow. Six Sigma is very data-driven, focused on process improvement, reducing errors, often using frameworks like DMAIC or DMADV.
DMAC.
Define, measure, analyze, improve, control. For fixing existing processes. DMADV is similar but for designing new processes. And the Adaptive Project Framework, APF, is specifically for projects with lots of uncertainty where you know you'll need to adapt significantly along the way.
Okay, interesting. Now, before you even commit to a methodology and really dive in, isn't there usually a step to figure out if the project is even worth doing? Feasibility analysis.
Absolutely. Feasibility analysis is that deep dive evaluation of all the critical bits of a proposed project to see how likely it is to succeed. ROI is often a big focus, but it also looks at things like community impact, environmental factors.
So when would you do one?
Typically, when you're thinking about a new business venture, a new product line, maybe a major acquisition, it's about assessing the costs versus the benefits before you commit big time.
So it's a reality check before jumping in.
Exactly, a rigorous assessment. And importantly, a good feasibility study should also think about contingency plans. What if it doesn't look feasible as planned? What are the alternatives?
What key things does it actually examine?
It looks at the people needed. Do we have the skills? Financial resources, is the money there? Technology, do we have the right tools? The potential ROI, financial or maybe societal benefit? Cash flow projections? And a thorough risk assessment, what could go wrong?
What are the real benefits of doing this homework up front?
Well, it gives decision makers a clear view of the pros and cons before spending loads of money. It's a crucial filter to stop risky or bad ideas from getting too far.
Saves you from potential disasters.
Hopefully. It can also highlight growth opportunities you hadn't seen. And a solid feasibility study is often key to convincing investors or lenders that your project is viable.
How does the process usually unfold? What are the steps?
It generally starts with a detailed look at the project idea itself, objectives, scope. Then you develop projected income based on market research. You do that market research surveys, analysis, plan the business structure, operations, create an opening day balance sheet, a starting financial snapshot. Then you review all that data, analyze it hard, and finally make the call. Go, no go, or modify.
Okay, so the project gets the green light, passes feasibility, now you need to define and structure it clearly. That's project representation.
Correct. Project representation is all the ways you formally show the project's structure, scope, processes. This includes things like data modeling, defining key elements and relationships, graphical stuff like Gantt charts for timelines, work breakdown structures, WBS for tasks.
Visual tools.
Yeah, logical structures showing hierarchies and dependencies, even mathematical models for optimizing resources or assessing risk.
And these initial pictures aren't set in stone. They get tweaked.
Absolutely. That's preliminary manipulation. Initial adjustments to make things clearer, more feasible, more adaptable. Like defining the scope, then breaking it down further with the WBS.
Refining it.
Right. Maybe reorganizing tasks, changing dependencies, reprioritizing, adjusting timelines on a Gantt chart, making sure the data you're using is accurate, shifting resources around people, budget maybe to focus on the critical path, refining the initial risk assessment based on a clearer picture.
Speaking of resources, getting the right stuff, people, money, gear to the right place at the right time seems absolutely vital. Resource allocation.
Nailed it. Resource allocation is that whole process of figuring out, assigning, and scheduling your available resources, money, equipment, materials, people, tech, in the smartest, most economical way. Especially critical because, let's face it, resources are usually scarce.
Never enough to go around.
Often feels that way, so
Yeah.
the project manager has to carefully plan when and how each resource gets used to maximize efficiency and avoid jams.
What are the payoffs for doing resource allocation well?
Oh, big ones. Better productivity. Obviously, people have what they need when they need it. Improved team morale, less frustration, clear roles, financial efficiency, less waste, staying on budget, quicker, better decisions because you know what's available, and fewer errors, less stress because workloads are more balanced.
Makes sense. Now, every project needs funding. You mentioned project financing earlier. How is that different from just regular business loans?
Yeah, project financing is a bit special. It's usually for a specific big capital investment that can kind of stand on its own economically, like a power plant or a toll road.
Okay.
A key difference is that the lenders rely mainly on the project's own future cash flow to get repaid, not necessarily the overall financial strength of the company sponsoring it.
So the project itself has to be viable.
Exactly. And the lenders often watch very closely how the money is spent, making sure it goes into the specific assets promised. That's often stricter than general corporate borrowing. Their main interest is in seeing that specific project succeed and generate cash.
Where does this kind of project finance typically come from?
A mix of places. Equity capital money from the project sponsors, like through shares, and borrowed capital things like debentures, bonds, bank loans, government subsidies sometimes, lease financing, even internal funds from the sponsor company or short-term bridge loans. Lots of options.
When you're figuring out if a project makes financial sense,
Yeah.
you need to know the cost of getting that money, the cost of capital.
Absolutely crucial. Getting that estimate right is fundamental. If you estimate too low, you run out of cash mid-project disaster.
Right.
If you estimate too high, you tie up capital unnecessarily that could have been used elsewhere. So finding that sweet spot is key.
What kinds of things make up the total capital cost of a project?
It's a long list. Costs of the land, developing the land, building costs, plant, offices, warehouses, plant and machinery, including import costs if needed, electrical systems, transformers, transporting and installing heavy gear, fees for technology or consultants, training costs, miscellaneous stuff like office furniture. Those early costs before your operational investigation fees, interest paid during construction, a contingency fund for unexpected issues, and the initial working capital needed to get started.
Okay, quite comprehensive. Now, during a project, the need for certain resources isn't always steady, right? Sometimes you need everyone all at once. How do managers handle that? Resource leveling.
Yes, resource leveling is the technique for smoothing out those peaks and valleys in resource demand. You adjust tasks' start and end dates, the non-critical ones, to balance things out.
Why do that?
The main goal is to avoid overallocation, needing more people or equipment than you have at a specific time, and also to avoid having resources sit idle. It creates a more stable, efficient use of resources and prevents scheduling conflicts.
How does it actually work? How do you level resources?
First, you identify your resource limits. Then you look at the schedule and pinpoint where you're overallocated. Then you start adjusting the timing of tasks that have some float or slack flexibility in their schedule.
The ones that aren't on the critical path.
Exactly. You have to be careful not to delay the critical path, because that delays the whole project. Techniques like CPM help you see those dependencies. Other methods like critical chain build in buffers. Sometimes you might use fast tracking, doing tasks in parallel, or even crashing, adding more resources to critical tasks to shorten them, though that usually costs more.
With all these moving parts, tasks, resources, schedules, costs, having a system to track it all seems essential. That's the Project Management Information System, or PMIS.
Absolutely. A PMIS is basically software designed to gather, organize, and use all that project data. It's the central hub for planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, closing projects. It helps information flow smoothly and gives you tools to manage everything.
What kind of tools or features does a typical PMIS have?
A good one offers secure data storage and easy retrieval. Powerful scheduling tools, Gantt charts, critical path analysis, slack calculation, comprehensive resource management tracking who's doing what, allocation, leveling costs, budget tracking, comparing actual spend to the budget. Control features for monitoring performance, updating plans, doing what-if scenarios, and really important reporting and communication tools to keep everyone informed.
How does a PMIS get used across the different project phases?
In initiation, it helps with early budgets, scope definition, maybe managing bids, initial scheduling, just organizing data. In planning, it's heavily used for detailed scheduling, cost management, setting KPIs, resource planning, establishing those all-important baselines.
Right.
During execution, it's the central hub for communication, file sharing. It lets you compare real-time data to the baseline, check projections, track task completion.
Okay.
And in review and closure, it helps evaluate if goals were met, stores all the documents for archiving, lets you analyze productivity, and generate those final reports.
What are some specific monitoring tools often found within a PMIS?
You'll often see Gantt charts, KPI dashboards, earned value management tools, tracking plan value, earned value, actual cost, CPM analysis, milestone tracking, risk registers or matrices, and those customizable project dashboards giving a real-time overview.
Often, projects involve bringing in outside help contractors. How important are they?
Contractors can be hugely important. They often bring specialized skills and efficiency that the internal team might lack, leading to higher quality work in specific areas.
Expertise?
Exactly. It can also be more cost-effective than hiring full-time staff for temporary needs. They offer flexibility. You can scale the workforce up or down. They often take on some of the risk for their part of the work, carrying their own insurance. Their specialization can mean faster completion times. They might have access to advanced tech or resources. They can help ensure you're meeting specific regulations or safety standards. And using them lets your core team focus on the main business strategy.
Project success isn't just about the technical stuff, though. It needs guidance, direction, project leadership.
Absolutely. Project leadership is about inspiring and guiding that team to succeed. It's about creating an environment where the team achieves more together than individuals could alone. And the project team is just that group working together on the common goal, whether they're in the same room or spread out virtually.
What does it take to be a successful project leader? What do they need to provide?
Effective leaders provide a clear vision, the why behind the project, giving energy and purpose. They provide direction structure, clarity on roles and responsibilities. They give regular constructive feedback so people can adjust and improve. And crucially, they offer support, creating a positive environment, giving people the resources and headspace they need to do good work. A core skill here is team development building and nurturing that cohesive, high-performing team.
Our sources mention stages teams typically go through, Tuckman's stages.
Yes, Bruce Tuckman's model is classic. Forming, the initial getting to know your phase, polite, low conflict. Storming. Reality sets in, challenges arise, there can be tension, frustration, uncomfortable, but necessary for growth. Norming. The team finds its rhythm, figures out how to work together, resolves conflicts. Performing. The team is humming, high trust, collaboration, focused on goals, really productive. And finally, adjourning. The project ends, the team wraps up, reflects, celebrates.
How the team is actually structured within the company must also matter. Project organization.
Yes, project organization is the framework defining expectations, roles, responsibilities, how communication and management happen throughout the project. A good structure encourages participation, uses diverse skills. You often see org charts for this.
What's the goal?
To optimize resources, ensure clear communication, reduce roadblocks. But it needs strong direction and training so everyone knows how it works.
What are the main ways projects get organized?
Several common types. Functional work stays within existing departments, coordinated by functional managers. Project-oriented. Dedicated project divisions. Project managers have lots of authority. Organic. Very flexible, informal, fast communication, often in smaller orgs or startups.
Right.
Matrix, a blend reporting to both functional and project managers. Can be balanced. Strong matrix, PM has more power. Or weak matrix, functional manager has more. Virtual teams spread out geographically, relying on tech. Democratic decisions driven by team consensus.
What about managing those organizations that are built around projects? Project-oriented organizations, or POOs.
Right. Companies where projects are the main way work gets done, construction, IT, consulting, R&D often work like this. They're defined by temporary, goal-focused work, dynamic teams.
What does that mean for managing them?
It means things like project portfolio management become absolutely critical for strategic alignment. Resource allocation needs to be super flexible. You need strong project managers and often a central project management office, PMO. And transferring knowledge between projects is vital.
And they must deal with a lot of change.
Constantly. Strategic changes, new tech, process improvements, cultural shifts. Managing that change well is key. Assess where you are, envision the future, get people involved, plan and communicate, implement and track, assess results.
What are the big challenges?
Resistance to change is common. Resource constraints across multiple projects. Sometimes a short-term project focus can overshadow long-term strategy, and knowledge gets lost when teams disband. Solutions involve lots of communication, participation, careful prioritization, strategic alignment, and good knowledge management systems.
Once a project is done, looking back to assess how it went is vital. Project evaluation.
Exactly. Project evaluation is systematically measuring success. Gathering data, using evaluation methods to see if objectives were met, find areas for improvement, ensure accountability. It keeps stakeholders updated on status, budget, schedule changes, and assesses costs, scope, risks, profitability.
When does evaluation happen?
It can happen at different times. Pre-project evaluation looks at the proposal's viability. Ongoing evaluation monitors progress during the project. Post-project evaluation reviews the final outcomes and lessons learned.
And there are different types of evaluation, too. Different ways to look at it.
Yes. Formative evaluation happens during the project to help improve it as it goes. Process evaluation looks at how it was implemented, the efficiency of the process. Participatory evaluation involves stakeholders in the assessment. Summative evaluation is the final judgment at the end, did it meet its goals?
Okay.
Goals-based evaluation directly compares outcomes to the original objectives. Outcome-based evaluation looks at the broader impact, the so what. And post-project evaluation, again, focuses specifically on those lessons learned for the future.
Sometimes you need a more formal, independent look, a project audit.
Correct. A project audit is a systematic, often independent examination of the project's processes, procedures, performance, outcomes. The main goal is to check effectiveness and efficiency, find improvements, mitigate risks, ensure it aligns with the organization's goals.
What does an audit involve?
Defining the scope clearly, collecting data, analyzing and evaluating that data against criteria, identifying issues and opportunities, making recommendations, and formally reporting the findings.
Why bother with audits? It seems like extra work.
They're really valuable. They provide performance evaluation, a baseline for forecasting. They help mitigate risks proactively. They assure quality standards are met. They drive continuous improvement by finding process optimizations. And they boost stakeholder confidence through transparency and an independent checkup.
Are there different kinds of audits?
Yes, similar to evaluations. Performance audits check against objectives. Compliance audits check against rules and policies. Financial audits look at the money side. Risk management audits assess risk strategies. Process audits focus on efficiency. Quality audits check deliverables. And post-implementation audits review outcomes and lessons after completion.
When the project is finally truly finished, you need to wrap it up formally. The project closure report.
Exactly. The project closure report is that formal document summarizing everything after completion. It's the official record of performance, lessons learned, final assessment against objectives.
What goes into it?
Key things include: were the original goals and objectives met? Were all the key deliverables completed and handed over? What actual benefits were realized? What lessons were learned, good and bad? And a financial summary: how did we do against budget? What was the ROI?
What are the steps to actually close out a project?
Evaluate the overall success. Complete all the final paperwork. Release the resources, people, equipment. Write and distribute that closure report. Hold a final closeout meeting. Archive all the project documents properly. And importantly, celebrate the success with the team.
Okay, last big topic. Organizations usually have lots of projects going on at once. How do they manage that whole collection strategically? Project portfolio management or PPM?
Yes, project portfolio management, PPM, is that centralized management of all an organization's projects, whether they're related or not. The aim is to manage these competing initiatives and allocate those scarce resources to maximize overall value and strategic alignment.
So it includes deciding which projects even get started.
Yes, that project intake process, identifying, authorizing, assigning new projects, is a key part of PPM. It provides high-level control to make sure investments support business goals.
Why is PPM so crucial?
It's the bridge between strategy and execution. It helps ensure the right projects get done at the right time for the biggest impact. It helps prioritize high-value projects when you can't do everything.
What are the main benefits?
Better alignment with strategic goals. Takes personal bias out of project selection. Makes decisions easier, more data-driven. Helps prioritize effectively. Keeps focus on the big picture, not just project silos. Builds strong governance.
What are the basic steps in a PPM process?
First, clearly identify the guiding business objectives. Then, capture and research all the project requests and ideas coming in. Select the best projects based on strategic fit, benefits, resources, validate their feasibility, and formally initiate them into the portfolio. And finally, continuously manage and monitor the entire portfolio to ensure it stays aligned and delivers value.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful exploration into the world of projects. It's really clear that while projects are temporary, unique things, they are seriously complex. They demand careful, systematic management right through their life cycle. Understanding those core characteristics, the processes, the methodologies, the tools, it's all essential for success.
Absolutely. And for you, the learner, we really hope this deep dive has, demystified project management a bit, giving you a solid foundation without getting lost in the weeds.
Definitely. And on that note, here's a final thought for you to consider. Think about a project you've been involved in, big or small, work or personal. Looking back now with these ideas in mind, how do the concepts apply?
Yeah.
What might have been done differently with this knowledge? We really encourage you to explore areas that caught your interest further and just reflect on your own experiences in this dynamic world of projects. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive on the deep dive.